This month we're tying the Gammarus Scud, the Allen Brothers Gammarus Scud, which is a pattern we've developed over the years to specifically imitate most of the scuds, or a lot of the scuds found in rivers or across the country and elsewhere. The best part of the design on this fly, I think, is its translucency. We've used the D-rib and clear body stretch pulled over a loosely picked out dubbed body, which gives it a lot of translucency. I think a lot of the patterns on the market have a real opaque look to them. They're a little chunkier, and we've tried to come up with a pattern over the years to simulate a very translucent scud, which is the way the naturals. This bug was we first started tying to imitate the scuds found on the Muskegon River in Michigan, where I guide, and we think it's a real good match for that. But you can adjust the colors to accommodate for your particular rivers by changing the color of the D-rib. For instance, if the color of your scuds are gray, I would use a gray D-rib pulled with a clear body stretch over top and finished off in a dubbing appropriately. But you can mix and match, and which is a really neat thing about the pattern, and it gives a real lifelike silhouette and translucency, and catches a lot of big fish. Hope you enjoy. First step is going to be to place the hook in the jaws firmly. This pattern you want, just for ease in the beginning, at the end of the fly, you want to have that eye pointed up a little bit there. If you get it pointed down too much, it's really tough for the materials at the end of the fly. We're going to be using our gray-brown thread. Go ahead and secure that to the shank. Take that along. As it starts to curve real hard there, go ahead and snip that off. Next, we're going to get the dyed mallard. We're just going to. You can go ahead and use the natural tips on some of this. It's not real good, and one thing I do on this pattern a lot, I'm going to show you. You can either use the natural tips, or you can go ahead and just clip some off, and don't worry about the natural tips. I'm going to go ahead and lay those, tie them in right where we ended the thread there at the back. A couple loose wraps, then go ahead and take it on up. What I've been doing, and it works really well, is to go ahead and just leave it as is, real long, and I trim those at the end. Find with the mallard, it's often hard to get really good tips anyways, and it doesn't look bad at all because those parts at the end of the scud are not real sharp anyways. Next step is we're going to grab the extra small copper wire. We're going to tie that. We've advanced the thread back up to the front there. Go ahead and just capture the wire there, and we're going to just wrap that back, secure that all the way the length to build that uniform body back to right where the tails are coming out. So get back there, when we see it's tied out of the same area, we can go ahead and advance up to right at halfway point of the body. Just go ahead and let it rest there. Next step is going to be to grab the clear body stretch, and you can one way I found is easy to prepare this is you go ahead and make a few cuts in this. And notice there's a V shape there. You go ahead and use that V shape, tied in right at that halfway point. You can capture it there, and then you can take this, stretch it back, and you can get that scud back to be tied in right where that V ends. As you stretch it, you just kind of monitor that as you stretch it back. Get it right where the tail and wire is coming out, and then make a couple good wraps there, and then just bring you about 2 wraps up. We're going to tie in the rust D-rib next, which is this stuff. The scuds, as we mentioned, have a hemoglobin in their blood, and that rust vein is going to be underneath there to show up real well. You're going to go ahead and flip that. The orientation, it's always curled like that. On the convex side of it's a D-ribbed shape thing. The curl will indicate that the top side is the rounded side on this side I'm pointing to here. So we're going to tie that in upside down. So the rounded part down. Go ahead and capture that. Just bring it back, stretch it real tight so it's a thin tie-in area. Make a couple securing wraps there so it doesn't pull out at all, and then go ahead and just slowly compress that bit of rust there just to kind of make a nice uniform. Doesn't have to be perfect, and you can go ahead and make just a few wraps to get it streamlined again. Bring our thread almost to the back there and let it rest. Next step is going to be to take some the olive gray Scud dubbing. We're going to go ahead and dub a little bit of that on here. Wet your fingers as needed. We're to pull that loop up so that you don't have to do it at the end. If you try to spin it on the entire length and don't get it close, you're going to have a lot of thread ahead of the dubbing, and that makes it tough to get it done right. Okay, so now the thread is on there where the dubbing is applied. Go ahead and wrap right back to where the tails are coming. Give it a couple wraps into your dubbing, then you can just go ahead and start dubbing. The body on this, you want a real tight loop. This dubbing is real spiky and coarse, so that when we pick it out, it'll create the legs. But we don't want a real chunky body. That's one thing. I've used a little less, a little too little there. I'm going to go ahead and add just a touch so I can get to the eye. A lot of Scud patterns are real bulky, and the secret to this one is that it lets a lot of light through with the D-rib and the clear body stretch, and that's the key to this pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and add that a little bit less. We want to just end that right behind the eye. And the body, you notice it's a little fatter at the back, and it gets a little thinner on the dubbing, but in general it's fairly thin dubbed, and that's real important with this pattern, again, for the light going through the body. The next step is we're going to pull that D-rib over the top, and you can just stretch it. If it comes off the side there like that, you want to just manipulate it. It's not a big deal if it doesn't hit it just right the first time, because you can manipulate it once it's tied down. So we're going to make 1, 2, 3, lift it up, make a 1, 2 wraps in front of it. Make sure those are real tight. You can see it's already slipped around there on me. You can go ahead and just manipulate that, get it right back on top there. You want it to be right down the top, the dorsal side of the Scud there. So here's a picture of the striping right down the top. Go ahead and clip that off. And one step you can do here that helps a little bit is to, you can go ahead and throw a 1/2 inch in right here if you're not comfortable tying the pattern, because if you make a loose wrap and it pops that D-rib off, you're kind of stuck. So you can do that at this point if you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and just pull over the clear body stretch now, try to get that to straddle that just right, and get that to just make wrap over there. 1, 2, pull it back, 1, 2. Those second wraps underneath just kind of cinch it down so it's less likely to pop off and go haywire on you. Okay, I'm going to stretch and pull and clip that. So now we've got the clear pulled over the D-rib, which gives us 2 layers of light penetration, so we've got some real translucency. Now we're going to go ahead and take the copper wire, make 1 wrap right against the shank in the back, and we're going to start advancing. The back wraps can be a little more space than the front wraps. Just going to wrap real nice and tight. Make sure you don't break it, but at the same time you want to get it real tight. So I'm getting a little tighter on my wraps up front. You don't want to go so tight that you can't pick out your legs, but you can get it a little tighter as you go forward. And then we're going to try to end right at the right where the thread stops there. We're going to go ahead and pull that up, make a wrap behind it. Then you want to make a couple wraps here to secure the copper. 1, 2. And we're going to do our twist and break, or just spin and break there. Just rotate that around until it breaks off, forming that little hook. And at this point, we are at the end of the fly, except for the legs. I'm going to go ahead and whip finish this, and then we will finish the fly off with the legs. Make sure that cinches down real tight there. Give a little clip. Okay, the next and final stage is to go ahead and take your bodkin. This is a Jim Maurer special. If you don't have a Jim Maurer special, you can just use a regular bodkin. and pick those legs out. Be careful not to pop your copper. It's a really good idea to spin it around both sides. Get an even pull on those. It's a real coarse dubbing. Sometimes you'll think you're pulling copper when you're not. Just pay attention. Make sure you don't have it hooked underneath your bodkin or needle, and just don't be afraid to give it a good pull. This is another level of translucency to the bug as well for the Gammarus Scud, or we call it on the Muskegon River Scud. And there's the legs picked out. I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to pull those legs down a little bit and give it a little trim. Usually leave it a little shorter in the front and kind of taper it down to the back there. So I'm going to clip kind of towards the point of the fly. You don't have to get, it's nice to not get them perfectly cut. Sometimes I'll even change my angle of my blade just to get those legs so they're not all, it doesn't look like I just razored them off. Get the legs there. I'm going to go ahead and lift up the tail. Scissors there. Just about an 1/8 inch long tail there will do it. And that's the finished G Scud, Gammarus Scud, or the Muskegon River Scud. Really translucent. We got the D rib, which is the rust. You can also incidentally change that to match the scuds in your area. If you want, if it were more of a true gray scud, you could put a gray D rib and then clear over top, which would give you levels of translucency but also change its color. This design is simple but very effective, and I think you'll enjoy fishing it and the fish will love it.